Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the hour. Japan claims a Chinese military plane violated its territorial airspace for the first time. Plus, UN Chief Antonio Guterres issues climate SOS amid rising sea levels, calling countries to save our seas. The World Today starts now. An investigation has been demanded into the major cause of a devastating fire that engulfed a whole building in Dagenham, East London. The London Fire Brigade brought the fire under control on Monday with the help of 40 fire engines and around 225 firefighters. Although everyone has been accounted for, families still fear that they've lost all their properties in the fire. So another tragedy in the UK. 5 more people have been stabbed on the closing day of the Notting Hill Carnival, with police urging people to come forward with information that could help prevent violence. A 32-year-old mother was among 3 carnival goers stabbed on Sunday. She was stabbed in front of her young child. 15 officers were assaulted, although none were seriously injured, and 90 arrests were made on Sunday. 230 people have been arrested for a range of alleged crimes, including assault on an emergency worker, assault, possession with intent to supply, sexual offences, and robbery. Suspects were also arrested for drug possession, theft, possession of a nitrous oxide, and public order offences. Carnival goers spoke to the press on Sunday about the event.
I think I always feel the police presence at Carnival, but I felt a little bit more heavily today. And they got backpacks and things, it seems. But absolutely, police does not make me feel more safe at all, ever.
They've been wanting to over-police Carnival for a long time, but there's always been resistance and pushback against it. So this time, they're using it, the pretext is they're protecting us, but actually, there's a history in London, in the UK, of over-policing of black events, of black people. This is part of a premeditated plan that's been going on for decades to basically take over Carnival, over police Carnival, and turn it into something away from its roots.
Pretty chill so far. Everything seems quite well policed. There doesn't seem to be trouble. It's quite a reassuring amount of police.
But so far I have nothing to complain about, but I'll be staying away from them. From my experiences, that's all I can say.
Staying with the stabbings in Notting Hill, 3 men have been arrested today in connection with it. The woman stabbed on Sunday lies in hospital in critical condition. It's not known whether she was known to the men. The men arrested are aged 20, 22, and 24. The arrests are a significant step in the investigation and are a result of a determined effort by detectives who've worked around the clock to identify, locate, and arrest the suspect. 7,000 police officers were on duty for the bank holiday event on Sunday, which drew around 1 million people to West London. Well, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says the country's economy will get worse before it gets better, warning of a painful winter ahead. He made this known in his address at number 10 Downing Street earlier today. He says a forthcoming October budget is set to be painful. The outgoing Conservative government strongly denied claims of a black hole, with some members suggesting it could be a tactic to justify raising certain taxes, which Starmer previously ruled out.
Things are worse than we ever imagined. In the first few weeks, we discovered a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. And before anyone says, oh, this is just performative or playing politics, let's remember the OBR did not know about it. They wrote a letter setting that out. And they didn't know because the last government hid it. And even last Wednesday, just last Wednesday, we found out that thanks to the last government's recklessness, we borrowed almost £5 billion more than the OBR expected in the last 3 months alone. That's not performative, that's fact. We've also seen shocking scenes across the nation. A mindless minority of thugs who thought that they could get away with causing chaos, smashing up communities and terrifying minorities. vandalizing and destroying people's property, even trying to set fire to a building with human beings inside it. But these riots didn't happen in a vacuum. They exposed the state of our country, revealed a deeply unhealthy society, the cracks in our foundations laid bare, weakened by a decade of division and decline, infected by a spiral of populism which fed off cycles of failure of the last government.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Now, Japan is accusing China of violating its airspace using a military aircraft. It will be the first known instance of such a direct violation. Officials say Japan scrambled fire jets after a Y-9 surveillance plane violated the territorial space of Danjo Islands for about 2 minutes at 11:29 local time. Japan's chief cabinet secretary has called the breach utterly unacceptable and summoned a Chinese embassy official in Tokyo in protest. The incident comes as tensions rise in the region where China competes for influence against the US and its allies, including Japan. Away from the UK, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has issued his latest climate SOS, calling on countries to save our seas as he warned of a crisis of an unimaginable scale caused by greenhouse gases and rising sea levels. Speaking at a gathering of Pacific Island regional leaders today in Tonga's capital, Nuku'alofa, he warned there was no lifeboat to take us back to safety. Nuku'alofa is hosting more than 1,000 international delegates for the Pacific Islands Forum Leaders meeting until August 30. Climate change and its impact on the Pacific's low-lying communities is high on the agenda at the gathering of regional officials who lead some of the world's most imperiled countries. Guterres, who last attended the leaders' meeting in 2019, warned that with about 90% of people living within 5 kilometers of the coast and an average elevation of just 1 to 2 meters above sea level, the Pacific Islands are uniquely exposed. He's also expected to visit Samoa while he is in the Pacific. Let's talk to climate change expert Olumide Idowu, who is here in Lagos, but joins us remotely. Olumide, great to see you as always. It's not the first time the UN Secretary General has made such a call, and it's not the first time we've heard calls for, climate SOS, what to do about our environments. Now he's specific about, the Pacific Islands and the Pacific Ocean. What exactly is his message, for the rest of the world, apart from the Pacific Islands?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me again today. I think the message should have come many years ago, but I can tell you that typically he has actually emphasized the urgent need for global action on how to combat climate change. And his message has present a lot around immediate action that is required. And he also make emphasis on global cooperation, which helps us to follow international corporations, urging nations to work together to meet the climate goals, particularly those outlined in the Paris Agreement. He has also emphasized the issue of investment in green technology, which is very, very key for us to start looking at how do we advocate for increasing investment in renewable energy and sustainable practices. He also emphasized on adaptation and resilience, which highlights the importance of helping vulnerable communities to adapt to the impact of climate change. So I think he has actually did a lot of work in putting this straight message to the whole world presently that there is need for us to save and see. And if we can do this, then we're going to be seeing what they call the most accurate and specific issue that need to be tackled. And the best way to do it is to start looking at how can we build a global cooperation? How can we start building on adaptation and resilience?
This all sounds very ambiguous when you're talking to ordinary individuals. Nations, individuals, even organizations are already doing, what they can to curb climate change. You talk about curbing greenhouse gases. Some companies are, considering how much it is exposed to the atmosphere and all of that. Does it mean that all our efforts are not enough to impact on this climate to slow the impacts of climate change?
Yeah, the issue of individual, whether organization, actually, they're actually taking active steps in this to address climate change. But, overall, the efforts may still not really be sufficient to meet this social or the scale or the urgency of the crisis that we find ourselves. And why is this happening is because there are a lot of insufficient ambition. Many initiatives may not go far enough because of, there's a lot of, there's what we call issue to achieve the target that we set, the international agreements, like the Paris Agreement. A lot of people are still seeing it as insufficient ambition. And the individual and organization are also looking at how can we talk about the economic and political constraints that we find ourselves in, making sure that our economic interests, political challenges are not hindering this complex climate action. And this is something that is very, very important. Why it's also stressing a lot about the save and see. It's also see for us as an individual to see how we can make a need for system change, because we need to make sure that the issue of climate change is a complex issue. And the only requirement that can make this system change across sector is for us to start looking at how can we talk about the issue of energy, talk about the issue of transportation, talk about the issue of agriculture, because these are the issues that is affecting the people at the grassroots. And we start need to look at how do we achieve this, meet all this impact in so enough. There's no enough public awareness and engagement for people to actually understand that we are at the receiving end. We are at the edge whereby we need to start talking about how do we grow, how do we make sure the effort that people are putting into this issue are not, going in vain, but are actually making sure they are seeing that the sustainable practices at a larger scale.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because the issue of the message getting to people, the people who need to hear it. I think that he also said yesterday, he gave a warning yesterday about those who live near the seas to be careful because they could be, the victims of this climate change. So what now happens to those who already have communities? And I'm not saying this lightly because I know that those communities close to the seas, some of them are very highly priced. I mean, the value, the land value in that area, and the realtor value in those areas are really high. Are you saying that people should not move to those areas, or should people move closer into the hinterlands rather than moving out to the sea? Because for some people, that's a preference, and they pay really good money to go to those areas.
Yeah, I think what we actually, if I get the question right, what we actually need to actually look at is, the Secretary General have actually highlighted the climate SOS, and he has made urgent need for a collective action. But the major thing that we need to start looking at, which is very, very important, is for us to start looking at how can we reduce our carbon footprint. A lot of people see it as a big award. But individually, we can reduce this carbon emission by reducing the use of kind of transportation that we have. By, people call biking, but there are a lot of things that need to be put in place because there are a lot of communities that actually are facing this problem. But how do we adapt to all these issues? Do we start looking at how to protect our marine habitats for the people that are closer to the sea? There's a lot of support initiative that's actually aim in preserving our coastal or our marine habitat that we need to start looking at, such as the mangrove processes, such as our wetlands have been taken away. So individually, I think it's very important that our marine environment or our environment actually requires a concerted effort that comes from individual and from the community. But not to forget that the government, the policymaker have a lot to do to make sure that they engage people in advocacy, they engage people in education and awareness, and they start looking at how can we provide or produce a sustainable way of living for people's life, so that we can be able to support a lot of conservative organizations, so that we can be able to support a lot of our marine water that have been used, so that we should be mindful of the kind of water we use as our freshwater system, even interconnected with more ecosystem, because our ecosystem is key for communities that live closer to the river. So it is high time for us to start looking at how do we promote, sustainable practices, which I think is something that's very key for our community. We need to take ownership. Even while the government is making policies, we need to take ownership of how do we make our community, our environment more sustainable for us by making sure that we create awareness around what is happening around us. We create education, because climate education is also very key for us to save our planet and save our ocean that is very, very prone to this issue of climate change.
My producer has, the video of, some communities that live close to the water, and I wanted you to speak to, paint a picture for us, the worst that could happen if we don't heed the Secretary General's calling and his SOS for saving our environment. You talked about saving, our water ecosystems. That's important. But what's the worst that could happen if we don't do that? And what's the worst that could happen to these communities that live close to the waters?
Yeah, thank you very much. The worst that will happen is properties will be taken away. Health-related issues will continue to occur. And a lot of people will continue to be, like people in the community will be at the receiving end. And if we don't take urgent action in making sure that basic amenities are provided, then there's going to be a lot of shift in the kind of way people live. And I will say to you that, when people are depressed, there's a lot of issues that come together to start to issue of depression. And it's going to be a lot of problem, because people will be displaced from their properties. And displacing people, taking people from their property or from where they make their food, where they get their livelihood, there's going to be a problem for them mentally. And mental issue is also a climate issue. And that is what is going to make them to start seeing themselves being taken away from their goods, taken away from their properties. And a lot of issues will start coming up. So I think, like they said, when two elephants are fighting, is the grass that suffers it. So the government needs to put a proper measure to make sure that these people staying at this kind of place are being properly taken to a place that is going to make them feel at home, and also making them to take action or take responsibility of every action they are looking or they are saying in the environment, to make sure that they take care of the environment, as the government is putting a change into what they need to do concerning the environment. Thank you.
Well, Lumide, thank you so much. And I know that you did a lot of work behind the scenes. I see, some of your efforts on social media, all of the efforts you put into drawing attention to what happens with climate change and how we can mitigate this. Thank you again for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're on the continent now. Sudan's top military commander, General Abdel Fattah Burhan, has met with locals and first responders at the site of a dam collapse in the northeast of the country. The Arabat Dam north of Port Sudan burst following torrential rain in the area, washing away farms and villages downstream. According to officials for the Red Sea state, the damage was extensive and at least 60 people may have died, with more missing. The health ministry says resources have been deployed to the area to help people who have been stranded. It's the latest disaster to hit Sudan, which has been ravaged by war since April last year, when fighting broke out between the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Millions of people have been forced from their homes by the fighting, and several of the country's states have declared famine. Denmark says it will close its embassies in Mali and Burkina Faso as part of its new strategy for cooperation with Africa. The foreign ministries said on Monday military coups in both countries had limited the scope for action in the Sahel region, and said it plans to open new missions in Senegal, Tunisia, and Rwanda, and increase its diplomatic workforce in its embassies in Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Ghana. Copenhagen said following the closures in Bamako and Ouagadougou, it will appoint a special representative for the Great Lakes and the Sahel region. Relations between the two African countries and the West have deteriorated since Mali's coup in 2020 and in Burkina Faso in 2022. Now, both have turned to Russia and its Wagner mercenary group for support since then. We're in South Africa, where motorists can look forward to significant relief at the fuel pumps next month. A stronger rand, coupled with lower oil prices, is set to drive down the cost of petrol and diesel. Fuel prices in South Africa are mainly influenced by the global price of oil and the rand-dollar exchange rates, as the majority of the country's fuel is imported. While taxes are added to the price of fuel at the pump, these have remained stable for the past 3 years. And while the chief economist at Econometrics, Dr. Azar Jiminin, says inflation might drop below 5% in the coming months.
The magnitude of that decline at 15 cents per litre for petrol and 28 cents per litre for diesel is far, far less than the 1 rand per litre thereabouts cuts that we had in fuel prices in June and July. So the impact in terms of reducing inflation is far, far milder than what was experienced last month and the month before. Even so, I think that other things equal, one is looking at inflation dropping below 5% in the next few months. And that is why there are still hopes for at least some interest rate relief. The problem is now this latest weakening of the rand may scupper the hopes that we would get maybe 2 cuts or even 3 cuts before the end of the year. One is now tempted to suggest that we'll only have a mild cut of 0.25% in November or so.
And here in Lagos, Nigeria, in its efforts to build a more resilient state that is safe and livable for all, the state government has disclosed readiness to hold a sustainability summit that will make everyone thrive or strive in their own space. This was announced by the Special Advisor on Sustainable Development Goals, Dr. Orelua Fini, during a press conference in Ikeja. She says that this upcoming summit will help promote sustainable practices towards 2030.
Gentlemen of the press.
Achieving the Sustainability Development Goals is one of the major priorities of the Lagos State government. Parts of the steps taken towards the realization of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainability Development is the reason for this joint press conference by the Lagos State Office of Sustainability Development Goals, State Environmental Protection Agency, and the Lagos State Safety Commission to announce a new initiative that will build and achieve a resilient Lagos.
The Lagos Sustainability Summit stands as a testament to our collective resolve. It's a landmark event born from our collaborative efforts of key agencies, a testament to SDG 17. Together, we have come to the realization that the future we aspire to is not just a dream, but it is our responsibility.
Another important aspect of the forthcoming Lagos Sustainability Summit is protection of the environment.
We can immediately tell that an environment that you're not deliberate about will get to shambles. So on this, we are partnering very closely with the observant today. I was speaking with one voice to say that all our industries and our facilities must be socially compliant. I must champion that cause that will lead a better Lagos.
Safety of lives and property is also part of the government's urbanization vision.
Our promise basically is to ensure that every worker that leaves their houses in the morning can go back home safely without the fear of injury, without the fear of diseases, without the fear of death. And this is our mandate at the Safety Commission to ensure the protection of lives and property. And this is our promise.
What we plan to do in the coming year is to see the resolutions that come out of the summit, how it will be changed in each of those ministries, departments, and agencies from a budgetary point of view.
The Lagos Sustainability Summit, scheduled to hold in September, is expected to chart a course for Lagos to emerge as a model for sustainability urban development, anchored on social equity, economic prosperity, and environmental stewardship.
Daredevil Performances is the name of the game, as motorcyclists in Morocco are making moves along what they call the wall of death. Well, it's defying the laws of gravity, moving diagonally against this wall. According to them, they rely on centrifugal force to maintain their balance. It's considered to be the most thrilling and exciting sport performances, combining daring and defiance in a dangerous situation that requires exceptional courage and riding skills. The sport began decades ago and has been linked to various cultures around the globe where drivers push the limits of their abilities on motorcycles or small cars in a circular track with vertical walls known as the Wall of Death. The pioneer of this adventure sport, Ali Ben Hassan in Morocco, was also the first Moroccan to tame the motor of danger, which is what a motorcycle is called, I guess. It was previously restricted, the sport was previously restricted to Europeans, but Bel Hassan has succeeded in etching the popular memory of Morocco as the war pioneer of the Wall of Death. We should say, as a note of warning, do not try this at home. Now, there are those among us who care a lot about furry friends. All the way in Kazakhstan, one blogger is putting this love to action by feeding stray cats using technology. So a camera is attached to a drone, allowing us to see the little friends enjoying their treats. You may have guessed it, the drones, deliver the meals to the cats on the streets. A bowl of food is attached to a drone. It carries out deliveries to various cats, stray cats, I believe, delicious meals there. Vladislav Prokhorov is the blogger. His social media content frequently shines a spotlight on the issue of stray animals in the city. He can feed up to 5 cats in one flight and is believed to have helped over 300 of them in just 1 month. The blogger is working on a new device which can feed up to 20 of those hungry kittens. That's so warm and nice. Thank you to the blogger, and thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.